And a very happy Thursday to you at 12:09 in the West. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wanks, the sports desk in Culver City.
John, when President Joe Biden thinks he's being clever, he's going to nail you down and beat you over the head with it and say it as many times until he gets a laugh.
Ocean temperatures near Miami are like stepping in a hot tub. They just topped 100 degrees, 100 degrees, and they're hitting record highs around the world. And that's more like, as I said, jumping in a hot tub than jumping in an ocean to ride a wave.
You just said that.
He's got hot tub on the mind.
He also said the number one killer is heat.
Most people don't realize for years heat has been, I have to admit, I didn't know it either. I thought it, I knew it was tough, but the number one weather-related killer is heat.
Okay, let's explore this for a moment because it's summer, it's hot outside, and the temperatures are high. So weather is the lead story on every news channel in America right now. And one of the statistics that I've seen appear on my television screen on more than one occasion is the number of people who have died from heat-related issues in the state of Arizona going back to, I think, the 1940s or 1950s. I forget when they started keeping track of this number. And what they showed was the numbers in recent decades spiking much higher today than in 1950 in the state of Arizona. And I say to myself, nobody lived in Arizona in the 1950s. When did they even become a state? I know they're before Alaska and Hawaii, but they were one of the last ones to join the Union.
1912 is when Arizona became the 47th state.
So there you go.
Oh, New Mexico became the 47th. Arizona became the 48th. And New Mexico's better.
Okay, so they were the last ones to enter the Union before Hawaii and before Alaska. Nobody lived there. There was Barry Goldwater and a couple of Sun Devils in Tempe. And that was it. And then, after we became crazy, their population started to spike because people were looking to get out of California and find a state that would offer them more freedom.
And they knew what they were getting. You know when you move to Phoenix, it's 120 in the summer.
That's right. Nobody moves there and says, oh my God, how come no one told me it was hot? I thought it was going to be like San Francisco. You know what you're buying when you go there. Nobody's surprised. And guess what? If their population continues to go up, there will be more people who die of heat-related illnesses. And if their population goes down, fewer people will die from heat-related illnesses. You know where it happens all the time is Europe. And you know why? Many of those buildings are very, very old and they don't have air conditioning. When we talk about an old building in California, we're talking about a post-war tract home that was built in 1945. When they talk about an old building in Europe, they're talking about something that was built in the year 2. There's a little difference. Even some of the high-end places in Europe don't have central air conditioning. Why you would live with that when you don't have to, I don't know. But weather is the top story all over the place, so make sure you drink plenty of liquids, and we're not talking about mixers. That's water, Gatorade, those sorts of things, and keep yourself safe because it is hot out there, as it usually is in the middle of summer.
Here's what I want to know, though. Is it that we're really seeing an extremely hot July, or is it that the morning shows can't interview celebrities right now, so the only thing they have left is weather?
Maybe that's it, because there's only one show that can get Barbie per day. And if Barbie's doing the Today Show, they have to talk about something else on Channel 2. So let's talk about the weather in Phoenix. 800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Well, Dianne Feinstein is the oldest member of the United States Senate. She's 90 years old, recently announced that she's not running for re-election, but will serve out the remainder of her term, which expires November of next year. Well, I guess that's when the election happens. It expires maybe January of next year. She was out with an illness. She had the shingles. She had other complications as a result of contracting the shingles. And she missed, 2.5 months of work?
That's right. A lot of judges got sat there and did not get approved because Di-Fi was shingling.
That's right. So she's back to work. And I noticed she's out of the wheelchair. She no longer has a hitch in her giddy-up. And she's walking the hallways of Washington, D.C., and she's showing up to vote. And it looks like she's put on a little bit of weight. She's not quite as emaciated as she was when she first returned. And whatever was going on with her eye looks like that's fixed too. So she's sitting at a committee hearing, and they're voting on something at the committee level. And the chair of the committee is a woman by the name of Patty Murray, who's a senator from Washington State. And she says, okay, we're going to go ahead and call roll, and everyone gets to vote. But apparently, Feinstein either didn't hear her or Feinstein has no clue where she is and what she's supposed to do. So instead of going aye or no or nay, she just starts reading a speech randomly. It was awkward, and it's all over the news today. Let's listen.
Clerk will call the roll.
Senator Feinstein.
Say aye.
Pardon me?
Aye.
What's the point of having a senator when their handler is pretty much puppeting them?
That's a good word, handler, because that's what she has around her, and she's not the only one.
Say aye.
Pardon me?
Aye.
Yeah.
To say
Is this the United States Senate or an old folks' home?
Well, I think there's more confusion going on here than at the old folks' home.
to say
I would like to support a yes vote on this. It provides $823 billion. That's an increase of $26 billion for the Department of Defense. And it funds priorities submitted.
yeah,
Now, two different aides are whispering in both of our ears. Now, you just said this. You just need to vote.
Oh, dear.
Submitted.
yeah, just say aye.
Okay, just
Great.
aye.
Thank you.
She has become the great aunt on National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Don't push me down, clock.
I don't know how you defend this one.
No, this one's outside of my ability to defend.
At this point, the senator, the great senator from California's brain has turned to mush.
Can you imagine what it must be like to be the flight attendant that offers her a drink on the airplane? Senator Feinstein, what would you like to drink? Blue. So this happened today. Yesterday, Mitch McConnell, who is in his 80s and is the Republican leader in the Senate, was giving a press conference, and it looked like he had a stroke on live television. Let's listen.
Here we go. This is Mitch McConnell at a press conference.
We're on a path to finishing the NDA this week. It's been good bipartisan cooperation and a string of
And then he just is sitting there, staring frozen. Everyone's uncomfortable. Nobody knows what to do. This is the longest period of silence we've ever heard in the United States Senate. The handler starts whispering in his ear, "Are you okay? Are you okay?"
Are you good, Mitch?
Okay, Mitch? Anything else you want to say, or should I just go back to your office? Do you want to say anything else to the press? Go back.
Do the senators have aides or nurses?
They need both.
These people are not functional human beings, and they're some of the most powerful among us. There's only 100 of them, and half of them are 100.
And apparently he fell on his head not long ago, and they withheld that information from the public.
Yeah, apparently he did a face plant getting off of a plane. He pulled a Biden, as they call it.
Was he going down the steps or was he walking down the jet bridge?
It's not totally clear, but I feel like that's an important thing to disclose when you have so many elderly members of the Senate. When you fall in your 80s, it means something.
If you're in your 80s, do not do the stairs on the plane. The jet bridge is much easier. It's flat. You don't have to worry about falling, so don't fly out of Burbank.
The back stairs are a young man's game.
Yes.
And anyone that understands that you can deplane in the back, because that's the best.
Yet all of these politicians, for whatever reason, feel the need to use the stairs. How their aides allow that to happen is beyond my ability to comprehend. For an 80-year-old, that's an obstacle course. Just get them the jet bridge. They probably need wheelchairs, too. I just got off a plane this weekend, and I was flying into Palm Springs. And let me tell you, when you fly into Florida, when you fly into Palm Springs, and you get off that plane onto the jet bridge, there is a line of wheelchairs as far as the eye can see. It was like a Cal Worthington lot of wheelchairs.
That's a lot of freeboarding.
Yeah. And I thought to myself, I know it's regulated how many handicap parking spots airports are supposed to have, but Palm Springs Airport should be like half blue spots. Half that plane needed a wheelchair. So that's what happened with Mitch McConnell. Then we have an 80-something-year-old president who's running for re-election, who's always screwing things up and having senior moments.
Yeah.
So Nancy Pelosi, who is the former speaker, yet didn't resign from Congress, so she's still a voting member, was on TV this weekend, and she was asked about Joe's advanced age and all of his age-related problems. Listen to what she had to say.
I couldn't be prouder of him, and again, we're very fortunate that he is in that position. But again, age is relative. I was in L.A. For some Democratic stuff recently, and I met with Norman Lear, who's 100, going on 101. He was telling me some new shows he was involved in. I was meeting with Frank Gehry, a 90-something architect, showing me new buildings he's building throughout the world. And they were like, 80, he's a kid. But again, it's relative. He's younger than I am, so he's a kid to me as well, the president is.
That was a fake laugh from Micah. That wasn't a joke, and it wasn't funny.
It's relative. He's younger than I am, so he's a kid to me as well, the president is.
That is the most fake morning show laugh I may have ever heard.
He's younger than I am. Well, you're 900 years old. So is the Sphinx.
And he's like a year younger than her. She's 81. He's 80.
And you know what? She looks younger than he does.
It's all that ice cream.
Ice cream? Who are you trying to kid? She's at that plastic surgeon's office more often than she's at her place in Napa.
Let's not forget who needed to get their hair did during COVID, whether there were lockdown restrictions or not.
There is more stress on her forehead in that face than on the San Andreas Fault. You know why she stepped down as Speaker of the House.
Why is that?
You can't be the face of a movement if your face has no movement.
These are the people running the country. They're all in their 80s. And they all don't make any sense, and this somehow is okay.
Here's the deal. After dealing with term limits in the state of California, I am now of the belief that term limits are no good. What you do is you just cause politicians to jump from office to office, which makes them more dependent on campaign contributors, which in California means the public employee unions and the developers. The public employee unions and the developers call all of the shots in the state. It used to be the oil industry and the railroads, and when the oil industry and the railroads ran things, the state functioned okay. But suddenly you put the janitors union in charge, things go off the rails. So term limits, they should go the way of the dodo. Now, part of what happens when you get rid of term limits is you have people who stay in office past their best-by date. We've seen a million examples of this, including in today's news cycle. The grossest example of this in California, and I've mentioned this before, was a guy by the name of Ralph Dills, who was a state senator from the South Bay. And he was out of it for the last 20 years he was in office. He was elected during the New Deal and left office in the 1990s. He had pink hair. He would have really liked the Barbie movie, and he would have looked like everyone standing in line. He used to dress like Rod Roddy, and he had a wife who I think was the nurse at one point who was accused of elder abuse and had one of the strangest funerals in human history because all of the people who were the vultures picking the meat off the bones got a chance to get up and talk, and apparently they had no clue that what they were doing was illegal. He was the one writing laws that the rest of us had to live by. And let me tell you, things were much better when senile Ralph Dills was in the California state legislature than Scott Wiener. People who are old and out of it are preferential to people who are young, have energy, and are malicious, and don't know the bad things that they're doing or don't seem to care. I much rather have 80 or 90-year-old politicians in office than what we have here in California. Because this is what you have to consider. It's like when you go into Iraq and you take out the government. You go into Afghanistan, you take out the government. The question you have to ask yourself is, when they go away, whoever replaces them, will that be better or worse for us? And that's the way you have to look at these geriatric, senile politicians. We do have the ability to take them out with term limits, but if you take them out, do you prefer what's going to happen next? Let's take Feinstein, for example. Let's say we had term limits and we got rid of her. Look at who's running to replace her. Adam Schiff, Barbara Lee, Katie Porter. Would you rather have any of them than Dianne Feinstein? I wouldn't.
At the end of the day,
look at Nancy Pelosi, whose clip we just played for you. She's not my favorite person in Congress, but look at what the alternative is. It's going to be Scott Wiener. He's the guy that doesn't want to put fentanyl dealers in prison for a long time. She's not even that crazy. Mitch McConnell, if he were to leave as Republican leader in the U.S. Senate, it would probably be that guy Rick Scott from Florida, whose eyes look just as crazy as the DA in Alameda. Is that preferential? I don't think so. I'd much rather have a senile politician than a young one who doesn't know what they're doing. My question to you right now at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222 is this. Given everything we've seen, given all the problems that we're aware of, would you put term limits in at the federal level so that people like Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, and the rest of them would have to go away? I wouldn't. I'd rather have the oldies but goodies, or oldies but I guess not as bad as the newbies, than the current crop that's moving up the ladder. What say you? Would you take these old politicians out with term limits if given the opportunity? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. 800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. We've had a number of seasoned citizens in elected office have senior moments publicly. Mitch McConnell appeared to have a stroke yesterday during a press conference. Dianne Feinstein was asked to vote on a matter that was appearing before her committee, and instead of voting, she started giving a speech and had to be cut off by her staff and told to vote a certain way. And Nancy Pelosi said that Joe Biden is a young kid compared to her, and Norman Lear is still making television at 101 years old. So stop talking about his age. If given the opportunity, given all the problems you know with aging politicians, would you take them out of office with term limits if you could? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. And, of course, if you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. A number of prominent politicians have had senior moments they wish they could take back. Dianne Feinstein was asked to vote in a committee hearing. Instead, she started delivering a speech. Her aides had to cut her off and tell her to just say aye. Mitch McConnell appeared to have a stroke on television yesterday. And Joe Biden as well, Joe Biden. If you could take these people out of office by instituting term limits at the federal level, would you do that? I wouldn't, because I think what's coming next is worse than what we have right now. What say you? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Let's begin with Michael in Los Angeles. Michael, you're on KABC. Hello.
Okay, then. Thank you so much for the call. I had a feeling from the first second that was a... It's something heartening to know that in 2023, people are still doing prank calls.
I kind of wanted to hear the impersonation of Desi Arnaz and Kermit the Frog, though.
I was not prepared to see where that was going to go because I only have 40 seconds of dump.
Was your assumption that he was going to be gratuitously sexual?
Whatever it was, I wasn't prepared to hear it.
Okay.
Let's try this again.
You know what they say. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know when you're going to bite into one of those disgusting sherry and alcohol-filled ones.
It's been a while. I don't think I have heard someone prank call into this show in like 3 years.
Personally, I enjoyed it.
There's a buddy of mine that I used to work with, Jason and Sulaco. He was Conway's producer forever and ever and ever. And when he was growing up, he would call into this radio station to prank call Meryl Schindler every single weekend.
Oh, God bless Meryl. Let's go to Warren in San Diego. Warren, you're on KABC. Hello.
Hey, guys. It's nice to talk to you. So I guess I won't be as funny as that prank caller, but I disagree with you, John. I think we need term limits because I'm tired of these politicians becoming filthy rich off of their time in office. So I think we can hinder that. And plus, what's going on with Biden right now, if he was out of office because he had term limits, we wouldn't be dealing with this in the first place. And his son as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. That being said, though, for whatever reason, the voting public, generally speaking, likes voting for geriatrics. Think about this for a second. I don't know if you've been following this congresswoman from Norwalk who announced her retirement. Her name is Grace Napolitano. She's the oldest member of the House of Representatives, and I believe she is 86 years old. She's been there for a very long time, I think since the 1990s. So she's going to retire. The candidate who is the leading candidate to replace her is a guy by the name of Bob Archuleta. He's the former mayor of Pico Rivera. He's 78 years old. He would be a 78-year-old freshman in the House of Representatives, which is a body that respects and rewards longevity. Barbara Lee is running to replace Dianne Feinstein for the U.S. Senate. Barbara Lee is in her, mid to late 70s, Randy?
Yes. She would be quite the old freshman senator if she gets elected.
I think she'd be 77 at the time of her election, which means with a 6-year term, she would be in her 80s as a freshman and running for re-election around the same time that Feinstein was running for re-election last time she ran. So you can put term limits on the books to try to prevent the Feinsteins of the world from sticking around forever. But if you start electing them when they're almost 80, you're still going to have a bunch of old people in office.
So you're saying you need age limit as well?
Well, you could do that. We have that for pilots.
Yeah, we don't let a 70-year-old fly a plane, but we let a 70-year-old vote on politics? Come on.
Yeah, exactly. I guess, whatever damage they could do in a short amount of time is hopefully the voting base will see their extremeness and vote them out of office before they can do 50 years of damage like Nancy Pelosi. I mean, they've had Biden and her and Boxer and Feinstein, they've had a lifetime to ruin the country, So it's like if we can see these extremists who they are in their first term and hopefully vote them out, where damage is still controllable.
Thank you for the call, sir. I appreciate it. Randy, here's another angle to this story. And I don't necessarily think I know the answer to the question, but maybe you do. If you're in your 80s or 90s and you're very rich, as almost all of them are, why do you want that job?
Power.
But with power comes a price. If you have to sit on an airplane once a week and go to Washington so you can vote, and you have to deal with the cold, and you have to deal with the heat and humidity during the summer, and you have to deal with people chasing you down hallways trying to embarrass you by getting a soundbite where it looks like you don't know what you're talking about, it has to be humiliating for Dianne Feinstein to look at the news, because every time there's a story about her, it's a story that makes it look like she's lost her mind.
Yeah, but I think, and this is where I do feel for her, and I do understand kind of what she's going through. If she gives up this job, she's got nothing. Her husband died last year. There's still a big old custody fight going on with who gets the will between her husband's first, marriage kids and what's going on with her. She has nothing to look forward to if she's not a senator. She's not going to write a book. She's too old for that. She will be completely irrelevant. And there are some people that I'm sure truly believe if they stop working, they'll drop dead.
Well, here's an interesting angle to the story you just mentioned. As Randy said, her husband, Dick Blum, died. And when Dick died, there was a trust that was established to take care of the widow, Dianne Feinstein, and their children. I believe he had 3 from a prior marriage. She had 1 from a prior marriage. And she was recently hospitalized with the shingles and had all the problems that were associated with that. She had to go in the hospital. She is now taking the trust to court, saying that the trustees are refusing to pay her medical bills. And she racked up a bunch of medical bills when she was in the hospital in San Francisco. And when she made her filing with the court, she said to the court that her daughter has power of attorney over her, meaning her daughter is the one that's calling the shots because she's too mentally incapacitated to run her own affairs. Well, if she's too mentally incapacitated to run her own affairs by her own admission, what the hell is she doing voting in Congress?
Well, at this point, she's a puppet, and she's voting whoever her staffers want her to vote. She doesn't know what the issue is. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't write her speeches. She, like you saw in the clip, they tell her to say I, she says I. She's an empty vessel. That's what we've got, and she's not the only one. There are several of them in the United States Senate.
Play that Feinstein clip again, because as you can hear, they're telling her to say I repeatedly, and she either can't hear them, can't understand them, or didn't want to do it, and she just started reading a speech.
Clerk will call the roll.
Senator Feinstein.
Say aye.
Pardon me?
Aye.
Yeah.
Just say aye.
I would like to support.
So really, who's in charge here? Is it Dianne Feinstein, or is it unnamed staffer telling her how to vote?
What Feinstein needed was a document presentation where she could move from slide to slide.
Next slide.
I would like to support a yes vote on this. It provides $823 billion. That's an increase of $26 billion for the Department of Defense. And it funds priorities submitted.
Yeah, just say aye.
Okay, just
Great.
aye.
Thank you.
You know what's the one thing that really makes me happy when I go to bed at night? As bad as we see Dianne Feinstein getting, as decrepit as she's getting, she is so much more popular than Kevin De Leon.
And just the mention of Katie Porter's name causes our email to blow up. You mentioned Feinstein's name, same thing doesn't happen. People still have a certain amount of respect for her, even though she is 90 years old and has lost a step or two, or maybe the entire footlocker. Katie Porter, not so much. It's 12. If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Well, Henry writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Dear John and Randy, we who live in California have painfully learned that term limits increase the possibility that politicians who are being termed out are more likely to vote for destructive policies, knowing they won't suffer any consequences.
That is a very astute point. The mailbag is keeping the postman busy today.
That's right. We got a whole bunch of them right now. Will writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Since none of our elected fossils ever grew up mentally or emotionally, it's no wonder we can't tell the difference between them and a zoned-out fentanyl junkie who just looks 115. Like Feinstein.
So harsh.
That was a good one. Rocco says, term limits are a bad deal. Everything went to hell in a handbasket when they lowered the age for president. Nicholas writes in about dinosaur politicians. I'm betting Satan is standing by ready to light the oven. That one's a little dark.
Oh, I live for those. And Randy, if you want to go back and listen to yesterday's show because maybe you were running errands or maybe you were on an airplane, that is easy to do.
That's right. Go to KBC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify. And I just discovered this, too. Apparently, you could just search for The John Phillips Show on YouTube, and our podcasts are getting posted there as well. There's a little graphic and everything, so... subscribe to the John Phillips Show on Apple Podcasts, iHeart, YouTube, whatever. Download them, give us the clicks, and then we can brag to everyone that we get more clicks than the other guys.
The Fix California Hour is coming up next. Is the LA Times for sale? Nika's daddy could be looking to get out of the newspaper business. We'll explore. Don't you go anywhere. This is Talk Radio 790 KABC.
No. Ay, no.